When Nathan first noticed Jack was missing, it wasn't unusual. Jack had a habit of disappearing for days, even weeks. It wasn't like they needed to speak every day. Their bond had always been one of understanding, forged in shared silences and unspoken agreements. But this time, something was different. It started with an unanswered text. "You good?" Nathan had sent, his thumbs hovering over the keyboard for an extra second before hitting send. No response, not for hours, not the next day. Then the second text. "Jack, call me." Still nothing. Nathan had always been the kind to let things lie, trusting that the world would set itself right in time. But a peculiar unease gnawed at him as the days stretched into a week. He called Jack's number, only to be met with the same automated voice. "The person you are trying to reach is unavailable." Nathan decided to check Jack's apartment. The building was a crumbling Victorian nestled between modern offices, the kind of place that seemed out of step with time. He climbed the narrow stairs, the smell of mildew sharp in the damp air. When he reached Jack's door, his knock echoed down the hall. No answer. "Jack!" he called, his voice swallowed by the building's oppressive silence. The door wasn't locked. Nathan hesitated before turning the knob. Inside, the apartment was exactly as Jack always kept it, messy but functional. Empty beer bottles lined the counter, a jacket draped carelessly over the couch. Yet something felt wrong. The air was stagnant, carrying an odor Nathan couldn't place. Not quite rot, but old and stale, as if the room had been sealed for years. Dust coated the surfaces, and the faint outline of footprints led from the couch to the bedroom. Nathan called out again, louder this time. Still nothing. He stepped inside, unease prickling at the back of his neck. Jack's bedroom door was ajar, the dim light inside casting long shadows. The bed was unmade, but there was no sign of Jack. On the nightstand, Nathan found Jack's phone. That was when the fear settled deep in his gut. Jack never went anywhere without his phone. Nathan picked it up, the screen cracked but still functional. The last message Jack had sent was to him weeks ago. "Don't come looking for me." Nathan froze. The message hadn't been there before, he was sure of it. His heart raced. As he glanced around the room, something was watching him. He could feel it. He left the apartment in a hurry, his pulse pounding in his ears. He needed answers, and fast. The first person Nathan went to was Mark, a mutual friend. "Jack's gone," Nathan said, his voice tight with frustration. "I checked his place, and he's just not there." Mark looked at him with a puzzled expression. "Who?" Jack Harper. You've known him for years." Marcus shook his head. "I don't know anyone named Jack Harper." Nathan stared, waiting for the joke to land. It didn't. "Come on, man, we all hung out last month at the pub, you and me, Jack, remember?" Mark's face was blank. "Nathan, I think you're confused. There was no Jack." The chill of Mark's words settled over Nathan like a shroud. He tried others, colleagues, old classmates, even Jack's landlord. All of them said the same thing. There was no Jack Harper. As the days wore on, Nathan's memories of Jack began to fragment. He couldn't recall their first meeting or how they'd become friends, yet he knew Jack existed. He had to. The silence of disbelief around him was maddening, like he was trapped in a shared delusion. Then the objects started appearing. The first was a lighter, engraved with the initials J.H. Nathan found it on his kitchen counter one morning, though he didn't smoke and had never seen it before. The second was a notebook, one he distinctly remembered Jack using. The pages were filled with notes about work, sketches of strange symbols, and a single phrase repeated over and over. "Don't let them take me." Nathan's dreams turned dark. He saw Jack standing in shadowy corridors, his face obscured by the dim light. Jack would reach out, his voice a whisper. "They're coming." Nathan's desperation led him back to Jack's apartment. The building seemed more decrepit than before, the walls damp with streaks of mold. Jack's door was ajar. Inside, the apartment had changed. It was empty, stripped of all furniture and personal belongings. Only a single item remained, a mirror leaning against the far wall. Nathan stepped closer. The reflection wasn't right. His own face was there, but something moved behind him, a flicker of motion in the shadows. He turned sharply, but the room was empty. When he looked back, the reflection had changed. Jack stood behind him, his face pale and gaunt, eyes sunken and filled with terror. "Help me," Jack mouthed. Nathan staggered back, his heart racing. The mirror cracked, a web of fractures spreading across its surface. The room grew cold, an icy breath washing over him. A sound like distant whispers filled the air, growing louder, more insistent. Words he couldn't understand, words that scraped against his mind like claws. He ran. Nathan didn't return home that night. He wandered the city, trying to piece together the unraveling threads of his reality. Jack's absence was a hole in his life that couldn't be ignored, but no one believed him. The next morning, he found a photograph slipped under his apartment door. It showed him and Jack, sitting on a park bench, laughing. The photo was weathered, as if it had been exposed to the elements for years. But Nathan remembered the day it was taken. It had been last summer. He flipped the photo over, scrawled on the back in shaky handwriting were the words, "They erased me. Don't let them erase you too." Nathan's world tilted. He felt the weight of unseen eyes watching him, the walls of his apartment pressing closer. He didn't know who they were, but he could feel their presence, suffocating and oppressive. The objects kept appearing. A scarf Nathan remembered Jack wearing, a coffee mug with Jack's favorite band on it, a half-empty pack of gum that still smelled of mint. Each item brought memories flooding back, vivid and undeniable. But with the memories came the whispers. They grew louder, angrier. Nathan couldn't sleep, he couldn't eat, he could barely think. One night, the whispers culminated in a single command. "Return." Nathan knew where he had to go. He found himself standing before the mirror in Jack's abandoned apartment. The cracks had spread, the glass barely holding together. He could see movement within, shapes writhing in the dark. Jack's voice came faint and distorted. "They're here! Run!" Nathan didn't move. He couldn't. The air grew heavy, pressing down on him like a physical force. The shapes in the mirror solidified, pale figures with hollow eyes and stretched mouths. They reached out. The last thing Nathan saw was Jack's reflection, screaming silently as the mirror shattered, pulling them both into the void. Nathan was never seen again. His apartment stood empty, his belongings left untouched. Months later, a new tenant moved into Jack's old apartment. Among the debris, they found a photograph of two men on a park bench, their faces blurred and unrecognizable. On the back, written in faded ink, were the words, "Don't come looking for us.